The first thing Caliph felt was cold. Not the gentle chill of high-altitude winds on her homeworld of Sarai, but a deep, invasive cold that gnawed at her bones and seeped into the core of her being. It came from the black metal beneath her, the deck plating of a derelict station drifting in the border void between three empires. The second thing she felt was pain, sharp, flaring, and relentless, radiating from the shattered membrane along her left side. She tried to move. Her body refused. Caliph opened her eyes, or what passed for eyes among her people. The station corridor was dark, lit only by emergency strips that pulsed a dying red every few seconds. Each pulse revealed streaks of dried violet blood on the walls.
Her blood.
Memory returned in fragments. The tribunal chamber, the circular dais, the cold, impassive faces of the Council of Unified Species hovering above her. Her crime echoing through the chamber in 100 translated tongues. Violation of the non-intervention accord. Unauthorized contact with a pre-FTL species. Sympathy toward humans. The sentence had been unanimous. Exile was too merciful. Execution too clean. Instead, they left her here. The station had once been a research outpost, abandoned decades ago after an experiment tore a hole in local space-time. Now it was little more than a drifting tomb. No power. No life support. No rescue beacons. The council had stripped her of rank, shattered her wings, and sealed her inside a failing pressure field. They expected vacuum to do the rest. Caliph exhaled slowly, each breath burning. Her kind could survive in thin atmospheres for days, sometimes weeks, but not like this. Not wounded. Not alone. Her thoughts drifted, heavy and slow. So this is how it ends, she thought. Then the station shuddered. At first, she assumed it was another hallucination brought on by oxygen deprivation. But the tremor came again, stronger this time, rattling loose debris from the ceiling. Somewhere far off, metal screamed against metal. A sound followed, deep, resonant, and unmistakable. A docking clamp. Calitha's heart stuttered. No one came here. The station was uncharted, deliberately erased from navigational records. Unless a third tremor ran through the corridor. Emergency lights flickered, then stabilized. The air pressure shifted slightly, enough that Caliph felt it along her damaged membranes. Footsteps echoed. They were uneven, heavy, accompanied by the faint hiss of a sealed environment suit. A beam of white light cut through the darkness, sweeping across walls, broken consoles, and finally settling on her crumpled form. The light froze. "Oh hell," a voice muttered. "You're alive." The translator embedded at the base of Calitha's skull struggled, then locked onto the unfamiliar cadence. The voice was low, rough, threaded with disbelief. Human. Her vision blurred. Humans were forbidden. Even acknowledging their existence beyond observation was grounds for punishment. Direct aid was the highest crime of all. The beam wavered as the human stepped closer. She saw his outline now, broad shoulders, reinforced suit, helmet visor glowing with data readouts. "Easy," he said, raising one gloved hand as if approaching a wounded animal. "I'm not here to hurt you." Caliph tried to speak. Only a rasp emerged. The human crouched beside her. His visor polarized, allowing her to see his eyes, dark, alert, and shockingly gentle. "Name's Elias Ward," he said. "Independent salvage operator. Or I was, before this turned into a rescue mission." He scanned her with a handheld device. The numbers flashing across his display made him swear softly. "They really did a number on you," he murmured. "Pressure fields collapsing. You've got internal bleeding, fractured wings, and your oxygen saturation is dropping fast." Calitha's vision narrowed. You must leave, she whispered. It is forbidden. Elias snorted. Yeah, well, I've noticed your galactic rulebook tends to leave a lot of people to die. He reached for a compact injector at his belt. No, Caliph said weakly. If you help me, they will punish you. He paused, meeting her gaze. They already have. Before she could ask what he meant, he pressed the injector against her neck and triggered it. Warmth flooded her system as nanomedical agents surged into her bloodstream, stabilizing what they could. Caliph gasped, her body arching as pain dulled to a manageable throb. Human medicine isn't optimized for your species, Elias said, already lifting her with surprising care. But it'll keep you alive. The station groaned again, this time violently. Now we're leaving, he added. Rule or no rule. Elias's ship was small, angular, and unmistakably human in design. Functional over elegant, scarred with burn marks and patchwork repairs. As he sealed Caliph into a medbay cradle, alarms chirped softly, compensating for her physiology. She drifted in and out of consciousness as he worked, his movements efficient, practiced. He spoke to her the entire time, narrating what he was doing, grounding her to the present. Okay, stabilizers engaged, oxygen mix adjusted, don't try to move. You'll tear something important. At some point, the stars outside the viewport shifted, the derelict station shrinking into nothingness behind them. You should have left me, Caliph said later, when she could speak without coughing. Elias leaned against the bulkhead, helmet off now, revealing a face lined by years of vacuum exposure and hard decisions. Yeah, he agreed. Probably. Why didn't you? He considered the question longer than she expected. Because I recognized you. Her frill twitched. Impossible. Maybe, he said. But I've been watching your council's broadcasts for years. You were the one who argued against quarantining Earth. You said we weren't a threat. You said we deserved a chance. Caliph closed her eyes. That speech had sealed her fate. They called you naive, Elias continued. Idealistic. A liability. He met her gaze again. You were right. Silence filled the med bay, broken only by the hum of engines. You know what they'll do if they find you, Caliph said. Elias smiled grimly. They already know I exist. I broke their rules the moment I crossed into the sector. The difference is, now I'm doing it on purpose. The middle of the galaxy was not kind to rule breakers. Within days, Caliph's condition improved enough for her to leave the med bay. Her wings would never fully heal. The council had ensured that. But she could walk, could breathe without assistance, could think clearly again. Elias taught her the rhythms of a ship. How to brace during microjumps. How to stabilize herself when the inertial dampeners lagged. In return, she taught him how to navigate regions of space most humans didn't even know existed. They became something like partners, bound by mutual exile. But the galaxy noticed. The first patrol found them near a trade lane, its hull emblazoned with the sigils of the Unified Council. The demand was immediate and absolute. Transfer the fugitive. Submit to inspection. Human vessel, power down. Elias didn't hesitate. He burned his engines and ran. They jumped blind, tearing through unstable corridors of folded space. The ship screamed in protest, but held together through sheer stubborn engineering. Afterward, as they drifted in a dead zone beyond sensor range, Caliph stared at the stars and felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hope. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Elias shrugged. Yeah, I did. Over the following months, their legend grew. A human ship appearing where it shouldn't. A former council adjudicator at his side. They smuggled medical supplies to quarantined worlds. Evacuated species the council had deemed acceptable losses. Broadcast evidence of suppressed atrocities across open channels. Every act was another broken rule. Every jump was a risk. The Council declared Elias Ward an enemy of galactic order. A bounty was placed on both their heads, large enough to tempt entire fleets. The final confrontation came at Heliox Station, a massive hub where dozens of species converged. The Council intended to make an example of them, publicly, decisively. They never expected resistance. Humans came first, then others. Species Calith had once believed apathetic or compliant revealed hidden ships, hidden networks, hidden rage. The battle lit the station like a newborn star. In the chaos, Calith stood before the council chamber once more, Elias at her side. The same faces stared down at her, but now their expressions were fearful. "You destabilize everything we have built," one counselor hissed. Calith spread her damaged wings as wide as she could. "You built an empire on silence and abandonment." Elias stepped forward. "And we're done being quiet." The broadcast went out across the galaxy. When it ended, the Council's authority lay in ruins. They didn't win a war. They changed the rules. Years later, Calith stood on the observation deck of a new station, one built by cooperation rather than decree. Ships of countless designs docked peacefully, humans among them. Her wings still ached when solar winds shifted, but she wore the scars with pride. Elias joined her, handing her a steaming mug of something human and bitter. "Hard to believe they left you for dead," he said. Calith smiled softly. "Hard to believe a human broke every galactic rule to save me." He clinked his mug against hers. "Worth it." As the stars stretched endlessly before them, Calith knew one truth with absolute certainty. The galaxy would never be the same again. And for the first time, that wasn't something to fear. The council chamber did not fall with fire or screaming alarms. It fell with silence. Calith felt it first, the way a storm-sensitive membrane feels pressure change before thunder breaks. The great ring of delegates sat frozen, their hollow sigils flickering as transmissions flooded in from every corner of known space. Worlds they had labeled non-essential were broadcasting. Fleets that had sworn loyalty were standing down. Species once fractured and fearful were speaking in a single, unmistakable voice. Defiance. Elias stood beside her, one hand resting casually on the railing, the other near the emergency override panel he had already used twice during the standoff. His posture was relaxed, but Calith knew better. Humans hid readiness behind ease the way others hid weapons behind cloaks. "You've lost," Elias said calmly. "Not because we destroyed you, but because everyone finally saw you." A senior counselor rose, its elongated form trembling with restrained fury. "You believe chaos is victory," it spat. "Without us, the galaxy will tear itself apart." Calith stepped forward. "No," she said. Her voice carried, not amplified by technology, but by truth. "Without you, the galaxy will be forced to speak to itself again, to choose compassion instead of convenience." She met their eyes one by one. "You left me for dead because I refused to look away. Today, I stand here because a human refused to follow your rules." Elias glanced at her, surprised by the steel in her tone. She felt no fear now. The cold vacuum of that abandoned station felt like a distant life. "End the bounties," Calith said. "Dissolve the enforcement fleets. Open the archives. Every secret. Every erased world." The chamber erupted in overlapping objections, but they were weak, disorganized. Too late. Elias tapped a control on his wrist. Across the galaxy, the Council's private archives went public. The silence that followed was absolute. They left Heliox Station before the dust settled. No victory parade. No speeches beyond what had already been said. Elias preferred it that way. Caliph understood. Revolutions were not moments. They were wounds that needed time to heal. Their ship slipped into open space, engines humming steadily as stars stretched into long silver lines. For the first time since her exile, Caliph allowed herself to sit without bracing for impact. "What happens now?" Elias asked quietly. Caliph folded her partially healed wings close, considering. "Now we see who we really are." Weeks passed, then months. The galaxy did not collapse. It stumbled, argued, split, and reformed. Old rivalry surfaced, but so did alliances that had never been permitted before. Councils replaced councils. Assemblies formed without singular authority. Humanity was no longer a footnote. They were participants. Observers became protectors. Protectors became partners. Caliph found herself invited to speak again, not as an enforcer of doctrine, but as a witness. She refused titles. She accepted responsibility. Elias, predictably, refused everything. Until one day, standing on the half-completed observation ring of a joint species station orbiting a blue-white star, he broke his pattern. "They want me to command a fleet," he said, staring out at the void. Caliph tilted her head. And I told them no," he added. "But I said yes to helping design it." She smiled. A human answer. He chuckled. "Guess I'm learning." Years later, the abandoned station where Caliph had been left to die was no longer forgotten. It had been transformed, not into a monument of stone or steel, but into a relay of living memory. Ships stopped there not to mourn, but to remember why rules existed in the first place. Caliph stood at its center, the same cold metal beneath her feet, now warm with restored power. Her wings still bore scars, but they no longer trembled. Elias joined her, older now, lines deepened by laughter and loss alike. "They asked me what rules started all this," he said. Caliph glanced at him. "And what did you say?" He smiled softly. "That one life isn't worth less just because it's inconvenient." She looked out into the stars, where countless ships moved freely, unafraid. Once, she had been left for dead because she believed that truth. Now, it shaped the galaxy, and no council would ever be powerful enough to bury it again.